The UN's Pact for the Future sounds all lovely and warm and collaborative. Who wouldn't want to think about the future and a harmless pact to help protect humanity, all with your best interests at heart? Call me a skeptic. I think we need to dig a little deeper into this. So this pact was announced on the first official day of the UN's Summit of the Future. Perhaps it is going to make all our lives better, or perhaps it marks a significant step towards a technocratic vision of global governance. The Summit of the Future, which in itself is a weirdly broad title because there wouldn't be much demand for a summit discussing what's just happened in the past, was held at the beginning of the 79th session of the annual UN General Assembly. This summit has been in the making since at least 2022. It's following repeated calls by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to accelerate the completion of Agenda 2030. These were the goals set out by the UN in 2015. Now, Agenda 2030 basically underpins everything that is happening in towns and cities all across the world. And once you understand that, much of life, even here in the UK, begins to make perfect sense at a time when it can feel that nothing makes any bloody sense. Agenda 2030 consists of 17 sustainability goals. So that means that elected and some not so elected politicians came together and agreed that if only every government in the world would adhere to these 2030 aims, some might say instructions, we could eradicate poverty, improve health and education, reduce inequality, tackle climate change, and so on. You might recognise the branding. It is everywhere, although you probably almost never consciously noticed it. It was included in the Euros football. It appeared at the Olympics. It is in every corporate handbook and on every website. Open your new mobile phone and there it is in the apps, even though you didn't ask for it. But of course, who wouldn't want to achieve these noble aims of eradicating poverty and so on? It all sounds so lovely and benign. You would be a very brave leader to stand up at a UN assembly and say, actually, I quite like poverty and inequality, or I don't like poverty and inequality, but I do also have an obligation to make decisions which help people who voted for me in my own country too. And that, above all these lofty global aims, will be foremost in my mind. But as it is also lovely and benign, this Pact for the Future sits alongside two other complementary documents. They are the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. So what exactly is this Pact for the Future? Well, according to the United Nations, it covers a wide array of themes, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, digital cooperation, aka clamping down on free speech, human rights, gender equality, youth and future generations. It also focuses on transforming global governance to better address these challenges. Global governance, you say? Well, I didn't vote for anyone's prime minister but my own, and I certainly don't want one that is imposed upon me from another country. Have a look at a clip from the UN General Assembly where the Pact for the Future was adopted.
The commitments embodied in the Pact and its annexes reflect the collective will of member states and must guide our actions and encourage us to promote international peace and security, invigorate implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, foster just and inclusive societies, and ensure that technologies always serve the common good of humankind. We must move forward together in a spirit of solidarity and multilateral cooperation.
As you can see, world leaders are, on the surface at least, committed to this vision. But it is not possible to achieve these utopian ideals without a deliberate, perhaps forceful, redistribution of food, goods, property, and rights. Just like good old-fashioned communism, the ambition for equal outcome for everyone always results in the very rich getting supremely richer, the very poor perhaps being lifted up a little, but the billions in the middle getting colder, poorer, hungrier, and enslaved within their digital prison. Just as communism was never really about equality, this new version, which is deceptively called stakeholder capitalism, is not about equality either. This is Klaus Schwab's "you will own nothing and you will be happy" mantra. No, you won't. You'll be miserable, you'll be weak, you'll be obedient, but hopefully sufficiently angry to try and break free. The UN's Agenda 2030 is all about control. Leaders lacking empathy are not troubled by reducing humanity to a mere data set upon which they can keep tabs. And at that point, we, the people, are nothing more than a commodity which can be monetized. Will the people of the world comply with this technocratic vision, or will we rebel? Can we even find a different way to function outside of a digital prison? The Pact for the Future and its complementary documents are on the surface designed to create a more interconnected and cooperative world. The Global Digital Compact claims to aspire to making the use of digital technologies more responsible and inclusive. Who wouldn't want that? They claim that they are concerned about digital privacy, cybersecurity, and the digital divide. But whenever governments try to control the behemoth that is the online world, every road leads to the suppression of free speech and the ludicrous idea that someone somewhere in a lavishly glazed office can decide what is factual information and what is misinformation. The Declaration on Future Generations cleverly ramps up the guilt. Who could possibly resist measures that would be required to protect the planet for their children and grandchildren? And yes, of course, we need to leave this world in a better state than when we found it. But this has all been decided on the publicly indisputable assumption that there is consensus on, for example, man-made climate change due to carbon emissions.
Because 21st century challenges require 21st century solutions, frameworks that are networked and inclusive, and that draw on the expertise of all of humanity. I called for this summit because our world is heading off the rails, and we need tough decisions to get back on track.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has been a strong advocate for these initiatives. Let's hear what he had to say about the importance of these documents.
Conflicts are raging and multiplying, from the Middle East to Ukraine and Sudan, with no end in sight. Our collective security system is threatened by geopolitical divides, nuclear posturing, and the development of new weapons and theaters of war. Resources that could bring opportunities and hope are invested in death and destruction. Open pathways to new possibilities and opportunities. Our world is going through a time of turbulence and a period of transition. But we cannot wait for perfect conditions. We must take the first decisive steps towards updating and reforming international cooperation and make it more networked, more fair, and more inclusive now. And today, thanks to your efforts, we have. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations open pathways to new possibilities and opportunities.
Guterres emphasises the need for urgent action and global cooperation to address the challenges we face. The race is on to save the planet and possibly line the pockets of vested interests in captured regulatory bodies, made up of a very small group of experts rather than through any democratic process. Thankfully, Agenda 2030 has already sparked debates and protests in various parts of the world, despite it getting almost no mentions in the Western, particularly the British mainstream media. The alternative social news media is awash with awareness. Millions of you are concerned about the potential loss of national sovereignty and also individual freedoms. Agenda 2030's commitment to homes being given to climate migrants will make small boat illegal migration look utterly trivial. This powerful technocracy might prioritise so-called efficiency. They might persuade countries to be responsible over issues such as cleaner seas, education for girls under otherwise medieval regimes, and even toilets in remote African villages. But it is so obvious in their literature, have a look, it's in your phone, it's in your apps, that the stuff which really excites them is not the expensive projects like dredging plastic from oceans or building toilets for Maasai tribes. It's the profitable stuff. It's the wind turbines. It's the solar farms currently being built on top of beautiful, natural, life-giving farms. It is surveillance on the streets. It's the highly profitable diversity and inclusion ticket, which perhaps contains a blatant contradiction between the UN's ambition to empower women and girls, but also heavily promote the trans ideology, which can steal spaces from those women and girls. We all need to become hyper-vigilant to the 2030 UN agenda. Its endgame is control. Where and when you travel, what you eat, who you can see, what you can say. But all is not lost. The Dutch farmers and the Canadian truckers showed what can be done when people come together, driven by the need to put individual freedoms first. The freedom to transact, to trade, to refuse an injection that they didn't want in the case of the truckers, even just to grow the food that the farmers want to grow in the way that they want to grow it. This sort of collective has immense power. Once a group of people with megalomaniacal drives and vested profit motives control the food, they control the people. So stay informed about these developments and understand their implications. Engage in discussions, ask questions, make your voice heard. Chat about it at the bus stop. Show your mate down the pub that this agenda is already hidden in their handset. Ask how they feel about the erosion of their freedom from a small number of power trippers eating canapes in Europe. There are many ways to get involved. Attend public forums, vote in elections, join advocacy groups, and stay active in your community. By participating in these processes, we can help ensure that our future is shaped by you, the people, which is exactly how it should be.